The Moti brothers have been found and are back home after being abducted 3 weeks ago on their way to school in Polokwane. Police in Vuwani, Limpopo say they got a call last night to fetch the children, Zidan, aged 7, Zayyad at 11, Alaan, 13, and Zila, aged 15. The siblings were dropped by the side of the road and went to a nearby house to seek help. Police say doctors have confirmed they are in good health. The boys were snatched from their car by heavily armed men on October 20th. The families asked for privacy while the investigation continues. For more on this, I'm joined now by anti-crime activist Yusuf Abramjee. Yusuf, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. A sigh of relief for the Moti family as South Africa is essentially celebrating the return of the Moti brothers. It's been a long wait.
Good morning, indeed. Good news indeed for South Africans and especially for the family and friends of the Moti brothers. As you mentioned, they were dropped off on the side of the road in Vuwani. It's about 160 kilometers from where they live in Polokwane. They disappeared or they were taken at gunpoint just over 3 weeks ago. The family have been very, very anxious. So I think a lot of relief and a lot of questions still about the circumstances and exactly what happened that led to their release, Saiko.
Many questions and not very many answers, especially as police, Yusuf, have been very cagey in dealing with this investigation. I mean, what are some of the facts that we know so far, if there are any, including the period, the 3-week wait, what was happening? I suppose that's also a very big question that South Africans are asking themselves.
We have very little, in fact, we have no details about the state of their captivity, who took them, no arrests have been made. But let me speak to you very generally about what normally happens in kidnappings. So kidnappings is not new in South Africa. It's been carrying on for some years. We are now seeing an escalation. The Moti brothers were soft targets taken at gunpoint by seven heavily armed men. And we know that police hostage negotiators usually get involved. In many of the cases, and I'm not talking of the Moti case specifically, they don't do the negotiations with the police because very often the family believe that the police cannot be trusted. And the kidnappers would very often in their phone calls to the family say, the minute you involve the police, we are going to kill your loved ones. So the families are very cautious to get the police involved either publicly or quietly. In 99.9% of the kidnappings we've witnessed in South Africa and even in neighboring Mozambique, the motive is ransom. So the smaller syndicates will demand anything from 10,000 rand to 300,000, 400,000 rand. Then we have the so-called bigger, more organized crime syndicates. They are dangerous. They are highly skilled. And I think the Moti brothers were taken by one of those gangs, possibly involved in other kidnappings as well. And there are many of these gangs, I may say. And those gangs will take anything from 1 million, 2 million rand to 10 million, 20, 30, and even in some cases 50 million rand. They'll ask you to drop off the money at a certain location, or they'll ask you to pay it in Bitcoin, or if it's international syndicates, they'll even ask you to pay the money at a money exchange, either in Dubai or in the Far East. And that is how the victims normally get released. So once the money has been paid, the victims are freed. And I think the good news is in the Moti brothers one, the children are safe. A doctor examined them. They haven't still been interviewed by police, but the main thing is they've been safe. And they are now safely reunited with the family. And I hope, important police will make arrests and investigate it. In most of the kidnappings in South Africa, we haven't seen arrests being made, and that is a worry. We know we have a kidnapping task team. I believe they need to be strengthened. They need to have more resources. They need more highly skilled detectives. The police need very professionally trained hostage negotiators. So I think a lot of work still needs to be done.
Now, of course, very lastly, before we let you go, they really are fortunate that the Moti brothers were able to return home safely, speaking to what may have been playing out behind the scenes that we're not privy to as the public. But in terms of preventative measures for such highly skilled and highly strategized kidnappings, what would your experience talk to and perhaps some advice to others who may be targeted?
Well, first of all, the kidnappers, from my experience, hate the media and they hate social media. The first thing they will tell you is stay away, do not talk to the media. Otherwise, it will put their lives at risk. And even over the past 3 weeks, while I've commented generally about kidnappings, I stayed away from specifically referring to the Moti case because we are talking of a so-called live kidnapping case. So one must be very, very cautious. Secondly, I believe we need to invest in technology. Not only we as ordinary citizens, but even the South African Police Service. I don't want to give the tricks away, but these kidnappers are using technology to communicate, which makes it very, very difficult for law enforcement to trace them. And I think the time has now even come in for the FBI, Interpol, and other international bodies to assist South Africa. Thirdly, I would say cooperate with the kidnappers. No sense fighting back. Your life is more important. And normally in captivity in port, they'll take care of their victims because you are the asset. They'll give you food. They'll give you all the necessary facilities to wash and so on. In some cases, they even give their victims medication if the families request, and they ask you for a prescription of the medication. So the main thing is to cooperate, but I think we also have to be now start taking precautions. You know, the unfortunate part is they're now going for soft targets. They're going for children, they're going for women, and that is a worry. But I think the time has now come for us to look closer at using technology in the fight against kidnappings, and also for the law enforcement agencies and the South African Police Service specifically to get their act together.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. Anti-crime activist Yusuf Abramjee speaking there about the Moti brothers, the strategies and the big conversation that happened behind the scenes. Of course, we learned that the brothers have been returned home safe and unharmed.